ago, the world had become a very dark and sad place. People had forgotten about God. They filled their hearts with mean thoughts and their days with wicked things. They didn't love God, and they didn't love each other. It was a world full of noise and fighting and tears. It was a world breaking God's heart. God looked down at the beautiful world he had made, and his heart was filled with pain. The Bible tells us the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. He saw that everything had gone wrong. The wonderful world he had created was now filled with shadows and chaos. It was like a beautiful song that had turned into a loud, ugly noise. God knew he had to wash the world clean and start over. But in the middle of all this darkness, God saw one good man. His name was Noah. Noah was different from everyone else. He still loved God. He walked with God and talked with him like a friend. The Bible says, "But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. While the world was busy with its own selfish plans, Noah was busy listening to God. He was a little flicker of light in a world that had forgotten the sun. And God had a very special, very secret, and very big plan for Noah. God came to Noah and whispered his secret plan. It was a rescue plan. He told Noah, "So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out." God gave Noah the exact instructions, like a blueprint from heaven. He told him how long, how wide, and how high to build it. It would be a giant wooden boat, bigger than any boat anyone had ever seen. It was a plan to save Noah, his family, and a piece of the beautiful creation God loved so much. It was a wild plan, a crazy plan, but it was God's plan, and Noah listened to every single word. So Noah got to work. He and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, picked up their tools. Day after day, they sawed wood and hammered nails under the hot sun. They were building a boat in the middle of dry land, far away from any ocean. People would walk by, stop and stare. They would point their fingers and laugh. "Look at old Noah," they would shout. "He's building a giant boat. Does he think it's going to rain?" They thought he was a silly old man with a silly idea. They couldn't see the storm coming because their hearts were closed to God. But Noah kept on building because he trusted God's whisper more than the world's shouting. The ark grew bigger and bigger. It was as long as a football field and as tall as a 4-story building. It had one door and one window at the very top. Noah and his family worked and worked, coating every inch with sticky black pitch to keep the water out. It was hard work. Their hands hurt and their backs ached, but they didn't stop. They kept building just as God had told them. They were building a safe place, a floating home, an island of hope in a world that was about to be washed away. Every hammer blow was an act of faith, a sound of trust in God's promise. Then the most amazing thing happened. Just as God had planned, the animals started to arrive. They came from everywhere. Lions with their big fluffy manes walked side by side with the gentle lambs. Tall, graceful giraffes ducked their heads to get through the door. Big stomping elephants and tiny scurrying mice came. They came from the forests, the jungles, and the mountains. The Bible says, pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. It was a parade of God's creation, a quiet and orderly procession into the floating sanctuary. Noah and his family welcomed them all. They guided the pairs of animals into the rooms God had told them to build. There were slithering snakes and hopping kangaroos, growling bears and chirping birds. The big ark was filled with the sounds and smells of the animal kingdom. It was a zoo on a boat, a living library of God's creatures. Noah didn't have to go out and find them. God sent them to him. It was another sign, another whisper from God that said, "I am with you. My plan is happening. Trust me." And when the last little creature had waddled up the ramp, God himself shut the big, heavy door. For 7 days, Noah, his family, and all the animals waited inside the ark. Outside, the world went on as it always had. The sun shone, and people laughed at the big boat sealed shut on dry land. But inside, there was a quiet waiting. They were safe inside, sealed by God's own hand. They didn't know exactly what was coming, but they knew they were where God wanted them to be. They could hear the birds chirping and the lions snoring. They felt the gentle rock of the massive boat resting on the earth. It was the calm before the storm, a final moment of peace before the world changed forever. Then it began, a single drop of rain, then another and another. Soon the drops turned into a drizzle, and the drizzle turned into a downpour. But this was no ordinary rain. The Bible tells us that all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Water came down from the sky and gushed up from the ground. The sky turned black, and thunder roared like a furious giant. Lightning split the darkness, showing glimpses of a world in terror. The gentle streams turned into raging rivers, and the rivers overflowed, swallowing everything in their path. The water kept rising higher and higher. Inside the ark it was dark and noisy. Noah and his family could hear the terrifying roar of the water. They felt the boat lift off the ground, creaking and groaning as it began to float. The great waves crashed against the wooden walls, tossing the ark back and forth like a tiny toy. It must have been scary. They were all alone on a wild, angry sea. They couldn't see anything outside their one small window but darkness and rain. There was no land, no sun, no stars, only the endless churning water that covered the entire world. They had to hold on to each other and to their faith. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain did not stop. The water rose until it covered the tallest trees and the highest mountains. As the Bible says, the waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished: birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything and everyone that was not safe inside the ark was washed away, but Noah and his family were safe. They were floating above the destruction, carried by the very waters that destroyed the world below. Their hope was in God, who had given them the plan and sealed them inside. After many, many months, the rocking and tossing began to slow. The roar of the water became a gentle lapping sound. God had remembered Noah, the Bible says, but God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Slowly, carefully, the great flood began to go down. The water level dropped bit by bit, day by day. After a long time floating on the endless sea, Noah and his family felt a sudden gentle bump. The ark had come to rest. It had landed safely on the top of a mountain. But was it safe to go out? Noah needed to know. So he opened the window and sent out a raven, but it just flew back and forth. Then he sent out a dove, but it came back finding no place to land. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again. This time it returned with a freshly picked olive leaf in its beak. It was a sign of life, of land, of hope. A new world was waiting for them. Noah waited a little longer, and then God spoke to him once more. "Come out of the ark," God said. And Noah opened the big door. Noah, his family, and all the animals stepped out of the dark ark and into the bright sunshine. They took deep breaths of the clean, fresh air. The world was washed clean. It was quiet and new. The first thing Noah did was build an altar to thank God. He wanted to show God how grateful he was for saving them. God was pleased with Noah's thankful heart. He made a promise, not just to Noah, but to the whole world and every living creature. He promised he would never again destroy the earth with a flood. He said, "I